The Old Man and the Sea, Part 12. He always thought of the sea as la mar, which is what people call her in Spanish when they love her. Sometimes those who love her say bad things of her, but they are always sad as though she were a woman. Sometimes, no, some of the younger fishermen, those who used buoys, um, I really love the pronunciation of that word. Apparently, no, you can also pronounce it boy, boy. Uh, but according to Collins Dictionary, the Americans prefer to pronounce it buoy. And I like it because it looks like one of the students trying to say bye. For example, I buoyed a book yesterday. Okay, that's not the point. The point is it's buoy. Okay, what is a buoy? A buoy is a kind of float. Okay, what is a float? For example, you are playing in the pool and you have those things that are round shaped. Usually, you can climb on, so I don't know, you can lay there on the water, right? So that's a float. Or anything that doesn't sink, okay? Titanic sank due to an iceberg. So if you don't sink, you float, all right? And then you have a float, it is anything that floats. But then you have a buoy that is a specific kind of float. It has bright color, it's modern, and etc. Keep in mind that it's the younger fishermen who used buoys, all right, instead of regular floats. Some of the younger fishermen, those who used buoys as floats for their lines and had motorboats, but when the shark livers had brought them much money, spoke of her as El Mar. Remember, remember that in Spanish. Remember, guys, that in Spanish, la is the feminine and el is the masculine, right? So the younger fishermen prefer to call the sea as a man, masculine, right? He spoke of her as El Mar, which is masculine. They spoke of her as a contestant, or a place, or even an enemy. A contestant is in a competition. The other guy is the contestant, right? I don't know. Show do milhão. Passa ou repassa. I'm sure you don't know what it is, right? But in Passa ou repassa, it was like a question and answer game. There will be two groups, so those guys there were the contestants. So they faced the ocean as if the ocean were a contestant or a place, just a place, or even an enemy. But the old man always thought of her as feminine and as something that gave and withheld. Withhold is when you don't give it, right? Withheld is the past of it. But the old man always thought of her as feminine and as something that gave or withheld great favors. And if she did wild or wicked things, if she did wild or wicked things, it was because she could not help them. She couldn't control herself, that sometimes she did wild and wicked, evil, okay? Wild and evil things, right? It was her nature. The moon affects her as it does a woman, he thought. As it does, okay, so the idea is that the moon affects the ocean and affects a woman, right? And because of that, both of them do sometimes things that cannot be controlled. They can't control themselves, right? I had a student, I have read this book with some students already. I had a student who thought this passage was extremely sexist. I don't know. I really don't know. What do you think? You can tell in the description, like in the comments right below. What do you think? But keep in mind, guys, that in some places in the United States, in some states, I think here in Brazil as well. Please help me, people from law. If a woman does something, you know, and she is in that period before her period, you know, period is menstruation, right? But we call period, right? So she is during her period, and I think the laws are more lenient. The laws are not so strict because it's a special. She's under special stress and etc. Right? So would that be sexist if we treated women that committed crime because they were in their period the same as men, because everybody is equal, or we should take into account that they have received an extra load of hormones and because of that they get stressed? Of course, I'm not saying, not talking about justifying, you know, a crime just because the woman was getting her period. But as you know, I cannot justify a guy who, I don't know, the guy was drunk and because he was drunk he committed a crime. But we have to take those things into considerations. Again, I know it's two different things. A guy who is drunk decided to drink, a woman getting her period didn't decide to get her period. But even so, the point is it will be taken into consideration, right? So that's the idea here, right? Sometimes the ocean is affected by the moon, as women are affected by the moon as well. So sometimes they can't help it. He was rowing steadily, and it was no effort for him, since he kept well within his speed, and the surface of the ocean was flat, except for the occasional swirls of the current. He was letting the current do a third of the work, and as it started to be light, he saw he was already further out than he had hoped to be at this hour. I worked the deep wells for a week and did nothing, he thought. Today I work out where the schools of Bonita and Albacore are, and maybe there will be a big one with them. Bonita and albacore are two kinds of fish. If I'm not wrong, guys, I could just find bonita as bonito, you know. Well, but we know those are two kinds of fish.